Right, looks like, oops, I don't want to do that. Looks like Facebook says, StreamYard says we have gone live. It always takes a little bit of, oh, even that says I am live. That's even more of a miracle. There we are, let's get rid of that, so that confused me. Didn't take much, of course we know it doesn't take much. Let me find Pentat. There we are.
See that? Looks like.
So I now know I can hear and see everyone is all right. And let's just share this, so that if anyone's struggling, they can get it on here. And then let's just see who comes in. Good morning, good evening, Imra. There we are, we're beginning to click in some people. There we are. All is well in the world. Well, I think all's well in the world. Good evening, Faith. Hello, Sarah. Thank you for joining us, my darlings. Oh, let me just turn that, if I move that down. Oh, yeah, that's better. You can actually see me head. It's even better, isn't it? Maybe not. Maybe you don't need to see my ugly mug shot. Well, you might want to see my ugly mug shot. Maybe not. And I've got all the bits all the way around. So, excellent. So, cool. So we've done some prep. I thought it might be prudent, because there's quite a lot of moulds, as ever, because the project wouldn't be mine without lots of moulds, because it just wouldn't, would it? Oh dear. And we've got bits of glitter, and I haven't got any glitter out any which way. So, hi Sheila, welcome my darling, thank you very much. Good evening, Elizabeth. Now then, put my brain into gear, because that's always a positive thing, isn't it? So, thank you, my darling, always appreciated. So I have a piece of MDF that's going to sit together, comme ça. There we are. Like that, when it's put together. And I've done a bit. Well, because you have to do a bit, don't you? Yeah. I've done a bit of priming, because priming helps give you your colours a true appearance, and also helps things like your resin pieces have a tooth for holding paints on long term. Why is that misbehaving? Let's just move that completely over there. And my primer of choice for today is the white primered paste. It's a nice thick paste, you see. If I give that a good shake, it's not going to move any which way. It's always good. And I've covered quite some of the pieces already. There we are. We're going to have to do both sides of this, but hey ho. Though I'm actually only going to decorate one side today. There we are. So that a lot of that bottom won't show, so that's okay. We don't quite get in. What I'm deliberately doing is avoiding that tag. I could have put a piece of masking tape along there. And I like these pieces because they have a nice rounded edge. They don't quite look like they're cut from a chunk of MDS, but yeah, I'm sure that you can find something similar in your own country. It doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't even have to be egg-shaped. To be fair, you could be doing this on almost any shape you want. But as it is Easter Sunday next weekend, I thought I would make an Easter project, or something vaguely Eastery, but one that I can also leave out for other parts of the year. So that'll be because I've got Facebook active on my page. So let's get rid of that. Let's not come out of the live, and then we'll stop those that binging. So I'm just going to add a layer of the primer paste all over this, and this will just, well, there's a couple of reasons, but this is going to act as a layer because I want to pop a piece of rice paper onto here, and if I don't have a nice white surface, then it will muddy the colours a little bit, or a lot in fact. There we are. So let me just pop that over there, and let's give that a blast dry. Now don't burn yourself on your hot glue gun, because that would definitely not be a smart move. Let's see who's joined in. Good evening, Isabel. Thank you very much. Hi, Connie. So we've got a good number of people joining us in. It's always nice to see. I am, to the best of my knowledge, going to be live now every Tuesday for until Pentacolor suggests otherwise. I will be mixing in the new products along with the old products as they work, because I think it's important that we have products that will work together. And so while something might have a primary intention, she says, having made a mess of that there, because I wasn't patient, the primary intention is for something to be used in one way. Actually, the joy of a good quality product is that they are uber versatile and can be used for lots of different techniques and in lots of different ways. So there isn't much we can do about it. So I have done a reasonable amount of timing already, but I didn't want to skip it completely because I do think, she said, patience is not my virtue. There we are. I'm going to use the coat anyway. You can see that it's sinking in. That's what happens when you have MDF pieces anyway. Good evening, Jan. Thank you, my darling. Thank you. Let's just get this ready done and we'll flip it over and do the other side. I might only prime the other side. I might not do the rest of the other side, but I do want to get it primed because it's going to be easier to decorate the second side at a later date if it is already primed, as opposed to half balancing in the air, which is, it's always a challenge. So that will work for that. Let's just flick this over. You see, make my life difficult by having a two-sided project, because why would you make your life easy for yourself? We can always come back. And there we are. Sort of across there. Don't want it to go into the bit that's going to sit in the slot in the base, because that might just drive me mad. Good afternoon or good evening, Julie. Welcome, my darling. Welcome. There we are. So I'll just give this a nice layer. And that will help. Yeah. I shouldn't have gone to the gym earlier on. The gym where I go to, the pool is shut because it's being retiled, because bits of tile were pinging off and hitting people. So it wasn't deemed very safe. There's a surprise. So because I'm a bit of an idiot, well, straight mad, I thought, the only exercise I like is the pool. But if I do nothing for the next few weeks, while it takes them 6 weeks to drain, redo, and go through all the health and safety requirements for getting the pool reopened, that I'd get a personal trainer, because just that, why wouldn't you? So I had a personal training session this morning, and I'm definitely thinking I'm going to feel it tomorrow. There's going to be some ouching as he had me moving weights. I really haven't lifted for ages. Is it good for me? Yeah, I'm sure it is. And it will pay off because it needs to be put on. But yeah, we just have to sometimes behave, don't we, and do these things. So I'm gonna be using House of Roses cocoas. I know they're not necessarily Easter, but Easter is associated with pretty things. So I think House of Roses is pretty, and the theme really, I don't know. This will work even if you don't generally celebrate Easter. I know Annie, who's one of the other designers, decorated some proper egg shaped pieces the other day with a faux natural effect, and they look stunning. But trying to decorate a 3D structure, such as a polystyrene egg, on a live when you can't go near it with a heat gun is a bit of a nightmare. Plastic baubles are the same, so although you can get egg-shaped ones, they're not great. And I just didn't have, you know, getting ceramic ones in the UK appears to be somewhat difficult. So, yeah. So that will become the bag, and I will tackle that with a different surface long term anyway. It's not going to stay like that. So I'm going to flip this over and we're going, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, I wasn't very patient, was I? I really wasn't very patient. There we are. So let's just add a bit more white gesso onto there. I've thinned it down, partly because I've just taken my brush out of the water, but also it's just going to make it easier for me to spread that, because the primer paste is really quite thick. It's great because it means that it'll go through a stencil, but if you're wanting it to give a nice smooth even layer, then thinning it down with a little bit of water, because it's a water-based product, will work really well. Now I just need to be patient. Good evening, Stephanie. Have you been transferred to your rehab centre today, or are you still stuck in your hospital bed? I do hope that you have managed to get transferred. So let's leave that primer paste. It's not too warm today. I've actually had to put the lights on in the conservatory for the live this evening, because the light's already quite dull, and that's because it's been threatening to rain here. How very, very inconsiderate of it after a few days of absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful weather. But hey ho! Yeah, so now we have a much more even surface. I think I need to let this dry though, because I can't really add the next layer into here with that wet. Why? Wet, because all that will happen is I shall shift the white onto my brush and make a mess. Oh, I'd rather not do that. Good evening, Juliana. Welcome. Hello, Donatella. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know Donatella is one of the team from Stamperia. She's a lovely lady, but I do know that she really doesn't speak very much English. But hopefully she'll bear with us while we get this sorted. And see things. But it's nice to see her joining us this evening. I am going to be using a lot of Stamperia products tonight, but obviously with the Pentacolor medium to see, that's not quite done. Ooh, not nice. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, I hope that they get you sorted, my darling. I hope they get you sorted. You are having a very, very tough time. Still not. Oh, yeah, and something you won't see me do very often, but I am going to do it tonight. And that's very white. So that can cool down a bit. I say the back of that I will do off the line. So this is the base, and I'm just going to, whenever you add a paint to an MDF surface, it will become slightly fluffy, and so I'm just going to smooth that off. You can see all of that, well, I can see all of that coming off there, and that's now giving me a soft smooth surface to work on. Around the edges might be a little bit more difficult because they're already shaped, but hey ho, let's see where we're going. Yeah. These little standing pads actually do make life much easier. There we are. So that can go there, and I will wipe that down before painting. Look at that. You're mucky already. So let's just give this a little bit of a sand to so I've got a starting point of a nice smooth surface. It's always good. It's not quite smooth. So let's just wipe that down and get rid of all of the gubbins off the desk, and also the dust off here. But I've now got a smooth surface that's reasonably pale. I think I've picked up some colour off there, but that's also okay. Let's just give this one a wipe whilst the going is good. There we are. And that baby white can sit over there for use at another time. Right. So I have a piece of rice paper. I've chosen this one, and it's from the House of Roses collection. And I've deliberately gone for one that reads the background pages. I love all of the really fancy pages. They're beautiful, but sometimes you just need something that's a bit more basic and not too detailed for the piece that is you've got, or the plan that you have in mind. So I'm just going to add a layer of decoupage glue. So this is the Pentacolor decoupage glue and fire varnish, and it is a matte one. It says matte on it, so but if you prefer a shiny one, then that's fine. I wouldn't suggest that you use the glittery one for this. I want an even layer, and I want a reasonable layer. So pop that over there, and then let's just pop that, and I will be taking off the excess, and it doesn't have to be completely flat into there. And I'm sure I will ultimately be able to find a project for the bits that are left over. And I can see I've got a big crease in there, so I'm just going to lift that off and smooth it out. And that happened because I just popped it straight down without actually being patient onto there. And I'm going to take a good amount of the varnish and glue and just pop this over the top of here. If you try doing this with a little bit on your brush, then all that actually will happen is that your brush will stick, and then you'll regret it because you'll pull at your paper, and that just makes for a messy, mucky mess. But we are definitely keeping our background simple today, because I think the paper will do enough with all of the embellishments that I have planned. So let's just pop that onto there. That feels to me like it might not be stuck around the edges. Yeah, how did I guess that? Just because of the way it moved. So let's just do this goodly there. Make sure you have it over. Then if I change my mind and want to add anything else, then it's protected, and that's fine. And that now can go out of the way. Good afternoon, Vivian. Thank you for joining us. I do not speak any German, I think, but unfortunately on my phone I have you set to automatic translate. So that piece can now go somewhere on the floor. There we are. That can go on the floor over there, and we'll just have a tidy up of this. Oh, I think it's easy to forget. Well, there's so many different lives going on, aren't there? Let's just clear that mess, because all of these little bits of white will get where I don't want it. It's not quite as bad as black, but yeah, black definitely gets every which way. There we are. So this is a silicone mat. They're quite useful for working on, and they have less glare than, there we are. It's actually branded, so I've had to turn it over. I'm working on the back. Okay, so I have some plans. You'd expect me to have a plan, wouldn't you? And I've got lots of pieces already partly done, but we're going to go through those techniques and ideas, because why wouldn't we? Wow, that's the whole purpose, isn't it? So let's pick up some greens. And let's start with that. And I want some brocante powder. There we are. So I've got what I need now for the green pieces. So let's just pop those out of harm's way. We'll pop those up there, stick that over there, and we're going to add some things onto the base, she said. There we are. So this is a Pentacolor Decor paint chalky in thorn colour. It could just as easily be the matte. I've just picked up the chalky, and we'll put a reasonable amount of that in, because I continue on my mission, use up what we have. And this is one of the new wall decor products called brocante powder, and I'm just going to add a goodly amount. There we are. Let's just pop that over there, over here, and we're going to add some texture in into this. You can hear how gritty it is. I've no idea what it's made from, but it definitely adds a grittiness. So and you can add as much or as little as you want. It will partially thicken up the paint. So let's just add a little bit more of this powder, but it allows you to control the texture that you get. You can mix it in with the Pentacolor Wall Decor glue, but equally it works mixed in with the paints, and it's giving me a coloured texture paste that will remain the true colour of my paint, unlike structure paste, which if I used that would ultimately, because it's a white base, would end up as a pale version. So there we are. So let's just add this in. So you can, so if I angle that, you can see that it's lumpy and it's got a texture. And if you dab it, you'll get more texture because you don't spread it out so much. But we're just going to give ourselves a nice base with a bit of texture onto here. Hopefully we've mixed up enough. If we haven't, well, we can always mix some more. That's okay. It's easier to mix more than to have to throw away old, because I don't have a pot that I can pop it into. There we are. So yeah, it's a product I definitely think is worth thinking about having in your stash, is the brocante powder, because it's just going to add, as I say, a grittiness, which sort of, for where I'm going with this project, seems to me to make sense. A few weeks ago I used the moss paste and the grass paste, but I didn't want to reuse the same things and this definitely gives a different feel. So you can see all of that texture that's being created because I've added in the powder into there. Once I've got this covered, I might do a little bit of dabbing to break up the lines from my brush. And I'm definitely not using a really, a good quality brush this evening. I've got one that has been thoroughly abused, because whenever you add a product that has grit into it and then start trying to to clean it, I'm not saying it's not possible to get all of the gunk out of it, but I sometimes think it's it's more difficult to do that. So there we are, and now we're going to end up, there we are, with maybe not quite enough paint. Let's see if we can stretch it out. It'll take a little bit to dry because it's obviously going on thicker, but the Brocamp powder will help it to dry. There we are. We might just about be there. There we are. So lots of texture on there, not massive, not to the point of it being lumpy, but definitely is giving me an extra layer of detail on there. Okie, so let's just lift that, pop it up out of the way. Let's scrape up that mess, and then we're going to decorate some of our pieces, because this project is definitely about layering. Now, why doesn't that surprise me, you say? So leaves, roses, bunnies, fences and trellises. Yay. Right, eeny, meeny, miny, where's my favourite brush? Well, that will do. So let's just open that, and as I can see a bit on there from the other one that I've managed to not cover, we'll tackle that while the going is good. So I'm going to use that same thorn colour. It's a little bit dark maybe for the papers, which but I've got a trick for lightening them. Remove the offending hair. It's not mine because it's too long. That will be my daughter, and we will just add. So these come from one of the moulds that come from the House of Roses collection that was relaunched with the extras and the silicone moulds a couple of months ago now. And I wasn't sure about them because, as you know, I'm rather a mould addict. But I do like moulds to be useful. And then I thought about it and I thought, trailing ivy, lots of uses for garden projects. Change the colours up, work for autumn. Ivy's around through winter, isn't it? And Easter, so and at all times of year, nice for wedding projects or christening. Lots and lots of uses. So I thought, this is going to be a mould that will work time and time and time again for me. So we're just going to give these all look, and I'm going to be filthy at the end of this because we know full well that's always what happens. But as I say, I have decorated some of them all, partly because I wanted to see some of the effects because I was playing with some different products to my usual, and partly because I thought you didn't want to spend every minute of the day of the evening watching me paint all of the moulds, because it really wouldn't be one of my pieces if it didn't have lots of moulds, now would it? Because we are definitely all about, that's the name, about the layering. There we are. Anyone would think I had a plan. I do have a plan. So whatever I'm doing, whenever I'm working, I think about a base that I want to use, and then I think about the focal imagery. And sometimes the focal imagery will dictate actually what base I'm going to use, and sometimes it doesn't, but that's okay. So that one can sit over there, and let's just wipe that out. And then I've got see, I've got lots of products out on my desk. There we are. Let's just pop some of that out of the way. So we've got, so these come from a mould with beautiful roses in them. So that's mould number 2. Why wouldn't I have used more than one name? It's a very pretty name, isn't it? But it's not one I think that's used very commonly nowadays for as a girl's name, but it is lovely. She says, there we are, we're vaguely clean. Well, I'm vaguely not clean too, but hey ho. Right. So we want dark beige and that one. She says, because, you know, we have the floor. So paint is paint. Well, paint isn't always paint. So this is a wall decor paint, and from the latest collection, and it's in the colour dark beige. Dark beige? Dark beige. So I just thought, this will work as the pale colour for my wood. Let's just get this clean. And these have, as I say, already been primed. There we are. That will work. That will work. So that can go there. So don't necessarily want that. So let us just take this. And just because this paint is labelled as suitable for walls, it doesn't mean that's the only thing. Now this trellis mould has lots of wood detailing into it, which probably the texture won't show so very well on there. You know, until we add the extra colours into it. But yeah, but because it's a trellis, it's inconsiderately got lots of nooks and crannies to cover. Don't necessarily need the, well, it won't do any harm. The back hasn't actually been primed because so it'll get what it gets on the back of it, and what will stay will stay. Sometimes it's easier to make sure you've got all of the bits in the crevices if you do turn things over, though. So there we are. See, even then we've managed to miss a bit. Does it matter if I've got? There we are. There we are, we are. Don't want white showing because that will not work for me. There we are. Okie dokie. So that is the front of that piece over there. And this is the wooden fence. And I actually think that this might become one of my absolute go-to moulds, because you can do it natural colours, you can do it you know, paint it to work with whatever project you want. I think it's just will work quite nicely globally for lots of different makes. And again, we've got lots of areas to get into to make sure we have it all covered. The back isn't a problem, so particularly some of it might show, but I can go back into the project from the opposite side if I want to. There we are. Let's just come into here Am I using an excessively large quantity of paint? Possibly. Let's just knock some of that off onto there, so we don't have a ridiculous amount lurking, and hopefully we've got that all reasonably covered. Cool, and that can go there. Let's just give that a good clean. Good. So the wall decor paints are designed to be washable on a wall once they're fully dressed, fully dried. So that's the real difference. They're sold in bigger quantities. So most paints you can get in lots of different quantities. The minimum starting size for these is 150 mils, which is quite a lot for a craft project use. But it is beautifully, highly pigmented, and that means that you can water it down quite a long way if you want to, which is also has its uses. Oh, she says. This is an older. This one is hazelnut, and it's a decor metal matte, a decor matte rather than a chalky. So we're using across here, and I'm mixing and matching and interchanging them. What I would say in terms of crafting, Julie, I would just go for the range that has that has the color that you want. So the bunny here comes from another mold from there, and these have been cast with the Pentacolor Rapid resin, because why wouldn't I use it? So although I've primed them, technically you don't always have to. And this rabbit mold, again, I think might come out year after year after year, because it's a generic shape, isn't it, from that point of view. And then we have those and some pink paint to go with that. There we are. And we're going to add a little bit of punch into it just to change the tone. And I've done a little bit. She says taking out 55 tons of it. Yeah, because you don't need to have every single colour in the world. You know, you should be able to mix and match your paints if you've got a reasonable number of starting out. They're not chalky. They're definitely not. They're not a chalky paint. They're definitely more matte acrylics, but they are designed to go on walls and for longevity, which is quite important, isn't it? I'm just going to pick up and give that that bunny has now got pink where I don't want it, but there we are. We'll sort that out. And we're going to give our bunny a good blast dry. So they're more on the matte end of the spectrum. You definitely need a primer underneath them, particularly if you are sticking them on, painting them onto difficult surfaces. Whereas the chalky paints will stick onto things, you know, if you want to risk it without a primer. Not my preference. I always use a primer, but I need some of these to be a little bit drier. So we're going to have another mountain of drying to do. So let's just pick up some of that with a nice little pen and just paint in some little bit of pink into that ear, just to soften it. It's not going to stay that, and we're going to add just a little bit onto the tip of that nose because we can, and add some life into it. Again, it's not going to stay bright pink, but there we are. There's lots and lots and lots of detail in that mold. Yeah, and there. So we'll pop that there, and that nice now can be properly dried. She says, right, eeny, meeny, miny. Aha, that's what we require in a minute. So we now need this lot to be dry and varnished. Let's just give these a good. The bunnies. There are 4 different bunnies in that mould, Sarah. So that's one of them. This is another. There's one that's lying down, and then there's another one that's more upright and definitely more side on than those 2. But they are, I think, rather nice. So let's just give these all a good try. Partly because I'm going to be adding some more layers over the top, and I need it. I need to get a layer of varnish on because I want to be able to wipe back. And if I don't add a layer of varnish, I'm likely, particularly when I'm force spraying things, to actually wipe off layers as we go. I think I see a blob of wet paint in the bottom of there, still a little bit shiny. So that's the finish, Julie. With that, the wall paint. And just be aware that although some of the names double across the ranges, the colours are not identical. They're in the family of the colour that they're named with, but they're not absolutely identical. Good evening, Judy. Welcome, welcome. Oh, cool. So I'm going to take a brush that I'm not overly precious about. So I'm just going to pick up a varnish. Let's just pick up a reasonable size brush. That's a better size brush. So let's just add a layer of varnish over these, and I am using the Decor varnish Silky Shine, but as again, you could just as easily be using these with the matte finish. For this project, I wouldn't particularly recommend the soft touch because I don't think it needs to feel like soft, like fabric. But if that's, if that's the only one you've got, it's a varnish, it will do the job quite nicely. There we are. It all depends on the look that you want. You're welcome, Julie. You're welcome. Have I got masses of varnish on there? Yeah. And I'm going to spread it about. I'll share the love. I don't want big thick layers because otherwise it's clearly going to take forever and a month of Sundays to dry. And much as I'm quite happy poodling along, doing all of these bits, and I don't mind being live for a good wee amount of time, you might not require me to be live for several hours. I'll get rid of some of that onto there. Pop that onto there. So that green was not completely dry, and that's fine. So let's just add this onto here. The back, as I say, of this one won't be visible. So, but if it's going to bother you, then obviously make sure both sides have been decorated, because there we are. So every nook and cranny in here needs to be covered. We'll do our best, which is why I wasn't worried about the amount of varnish that it looked like I'd cavalierly thrown onto that piece. There we are. And if you're really paranoid, varnish once, let it dry, and then varnish again. There we are. As I say, because this is going to be an upright project ultimately, I will, any areas that need to be touched up, I can touch up in situ from the back post live. That's okay. Just want to make sure I've got a nice layer all over. I don't want big globs. I can thin that out. I've probably got too much on my brush now, but that's also okay. There we are. Thin that out. There we are. Pop that onto there. I really don't like varnish. It makes my hands sticky. So, oh, she says, because she hasn't varnished her little rabbit. That wasn't clever, was it? Wasn't it clever? There we are. Let's just give Mr. Rabbit a little coating of varnish too, and we'll pop that there. Yeah, it's not quite ready to go in the bin, is that pot yet, any more than the decoupage glue and varnish that I've been saying I'm going to use up. I definitely think it was worth me sitting here for an hour this afternoon and doing some of the painting, because we might just be here a wee while. And of course, the good news is that there is another English language live this week. Teresa Renee from the USA is doing a live. Also, so that's cool. Because even having said be careful and make sure you cover it, I can see areas that I didn't get covered with that sort of dark beige paint. But hey ho, you will get there. Let's just give these all a goodly wash. I think by the time it's in situ, it really won't matter. And of course at home you've got a bit more time to do things, which is always makes life nice. You can always go back in and touch up. I don't know why we need to. Yeah. Haven't quite got those all dry yet. This is one. I might add some of that. Go back in and pick up the bits of the sand whilst those are cooling down a bit. Let me just do that whilst the going is good, because I know it's there, so I know at least it'll irritate me. There we are. I might not revarnish it because I'm not going to be able to get to these bits. So you see in here I've got a bit that's not painted. There's more than one area, I know there is. So, yeah, there we are. How do you manage to miss so many bits? There we are. Good. Okay. Right. Okay. They can sit over there for the moment. That can sit over there. Right. Eeny meeny. So there is a green in the new antique lasers, but it is this color, almost exactly this color. And I did try it, but you really wouldn't have known I'd put any of it on. And so so I've gone to the antiquing gels, which are one of my go-tos. Obviously, it's one of my favorite products, and in the olive color. This will allow me to add my low lights into these pieces and help to define everything. Now, this is a product that once, like the wall paint ones, will, once it's dry, is permanent. So there we are. So we're just going to wipe that off, and it's now, I've now got green in the depths that weren't there. If I show you this piece and now this piece, oh no, what have you managed to do? Have you managed to burn yourself, darling? I hope not. So it, because I'm not going to wipe it back off everything, and whilst it's wet, you can wipe as much as you can get at. So this is just going to lift off the surface, and it just does make such a huge difference to the overall finish, and in a very simple way. We know that when I'm making, we don't very often have stuff which I haven't added things to. It's part of my makes, isn't it? Things, but there we are. There we are. So those can sit there. That can go in there for a little wash. Let's just pick up, because we can. And let's give that a goodly rub. Right. There we are. Get rid of the green off there, because I don't want to contaminate this. So this is, I think, a beautiful colour. It is the new, one of the new wall lasers, and it's in the colour Bordeaux. The joy of in the original antiquing gels, the colours were the patina green, patina blue, olive, white, umber, brown and black. So quite a limited colour palette. And in the new collection, there's lots. And I'm in the pot, it doesn't look, I would say, it looks more brown than red. But on the pieces, it's absolutely a beautiful red. So it's worth, let's just stick that out of the way. Find a cleanish bit of that, and then I'm just going to wipe this back up off the surface. It will settle in all of the nooks and the crannies. There we are. So hopefully, thank you, Betty, much appreciated. Let's just give these just a little bit more glass cycle, because the ones I added a bit more extra paint to. I know you've used a dark red recently a rather lot. I really like that project. Really like that project. If people haven't seen the vintage armoire that Julie posted, then I really would suggest that it's worth hunting out, because it's lovely. Right. So at the moment, those pieces of wood and that bunny don't look particularly wood-like. Oh, ow, ow, ow. Right. So this is the new antique, and you can wipe this back. So Ellen J. Goods is a stockist of paint art in the USA. She used these paint in a really soft, subtle way, distressing some of the new plaster last night on a live, and that was also very, very good. So there we are. Let's just get this into every nook and every cranny. And again, these are designed to be permanent and washable once dry. So yeah, it's about having the products that work for you. I definitely think that they are easier to use than an ordinary paint, and then just taking a wipe and wiping back. You might not think so, but I definitely do. I think because they're designed to stay and act almost as a stain. And these are the antiquing gels have a transparency to them, so it does make a difference to the piece. To the finished pieces. So, Julie, I have news that I'm not allowed to spell out in words of half a syllable at the moment, because the company that is doing it is waiting until Tuesday, after Easter anyway, the 21st. To make an announcement when there are all of the retailers are in place. Yes, I did say retailers, because it's going to become much, much easier to get the paint art products over here. So let's just here we are. So can you see all of the detail in that piece? If I turn my hand over, I can spill the beans. What I will say is that from next week, those of you that have struggled to find nearly every paint art product in the UK will not be struggling. And that's probably all I really should say. By then, they will all be loaded onto people's web pages, on e-shops, making life very easy. Very easy. And then they might just appear down at the NEC in the autumn. And those of you that know me well can probably guess which company might be involved in them. There we are. Right, let us just get rid of some of that mess. There we are. So if I lift that up, let me have a clean part of my hand, and let's see if I can get that camera, to focus. There we are. Lots and lots of amazing detail in that mould. Let's just give our poor bunny a similar treatment. It's far easier than painting lots of them in. There we are. If I had a brain, it would be very dangerous. There we are. Let's just now wipe him back. It will sit in the nooks and the crannies. I don't necessarily want it tucked into the pink. There we are. But it's going to add a shadow under the whiskers and under the neck. There we are. Let's just take a little bit more of that off. There we are. Let's do that. Back. It wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be me without having mess everywhere, would it? So they can stay, that can stay, that can stay. That needs some dry brushing. They need some dry brushing. Let's just get rid of some of this mess, otherwise you'll never be able to see what's going on. Good evening, Liz. Welcome. Yeah. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. There we are. Right. Eeny, meeny, miny. We need a suitable brush for dry brushing. I knew I had one out. So I have a chalky paint here, because you don't have to just dry brush with white. You can dry brush with any colour that you want, and and also this one, which is mojito green, and that's because there's a brighter colour in the flowers or the leaves on the papers that we're using. So let's just add a little dry brush of that, a little dry brush of that, flat to it. I'm going to add some more of the next colour over the top. There we are. Right. Eeny, meeny, miny. Let's find a dry towel. Surprisingly, we have kitchen towel, I know. There we are. Work that into the bristles, but I don't need very much. And yeah, it's reasonably dry, she says, having knocked off most of it. And it's just a bit of a brighter colour. Might need a bit more. I was clearly being mean, because it needs to match with the ones for that I've done on the other ones I've pre-done. That is the risk of pre-preparing some items, is that you don't then end up with the same colour balance. That's better. So that really does brighten that up. So as I say, I've chosen these because they will, in my head, they work with the colours of the papers. There we are. Right, let's take off 99.9% of that and then get it dry. I do have another brush. Because I'll need that to be dry. And like Vasilis, I am going to use some of the primer paste as a white for my white dry brushing, because I want this flower to be paler than it actually is here. There we are. So it makes such a huge difference. Right, let's just add in some of the details onto our bunny. Give him a nice little white tail, the tail being on that. There we are. Let me just check see, there really isn't an obvious tail on that one. There we are. Right, let's shuffle that in there. Let's stick that out of the way. Let's tidy up that mess. Don't know why I did that. I didn't know to where you did that, but let's just grab another one of these. There we are. So these are natural bristle brushes. And let's bring out the texture on the base of here. Oh, we don't look like we've got two, but well, I don't know whether you're seeing it or not, but I can definitely see the texture. Yeah, you can see that I've added, and that's there purely because of the brocante powder. If I hadn't put the brocante powder into there, it would be flat paint because it's an acrylic paint that I've used. There we are. Okay. Lots of thin layers are better than lots of thick layers. And once you've got less on, it's easy to flick over the surface. You can see all of that gorgeous, yummy texture really coming to the fore. There we are. Yeah, it works. It works. And the brocante powder does it. I've no idea what it is, but what it's actually made of, because but I think I definitely prefer it to the mineral powder. Right, eeny meeny. Can I move? Oh, yes, I can. That's a relief, isn't it? My quads are not quite shouting at me. Oh. Here we are. And have we left this long enough to dry? Answer on a postcard. That'll be no. I can feel that it's still dry. There we are. Let's just get rid of them. Pop them over there. Not so they fall on the floor. Tuck some of this mess out of the way. Let's just give this a brush dry, particularly around the edges. Right. Let's just take off the rice paper, and then you can either wax or you can paint the edge. I'm going to wax, it's going to be quicker. You just need to be patient and come all the way around. Or not patient, as the case may be. No, the firmer one is definitely, the nail file is definitely going to work better. So bit by bit over the lives, I've managed to show people how to use nearly all of the new products in a mixed media crafting way. Yes, you can use them on walls, but you don't have to. There we are. I might just grab some turtle green wax because I think that's going to work better than the gold. And I didn't think that bit through. I did that. Right, let's just cut that bit across there. There we go. Ooh, where is my blade? She says. Where would be my blade? There we are. Excellent. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Okay. So that can go for a further project. Because why not? Why not? Why not? And then let's just... So this is turtle green. Because it's going to work in, isn't it? There we are. There we are. So obviously you can use whatever colour wax that you've got. If you like the idea of complete contrast, then go with complete contrast and use the gold. It's why you have to have everything, you know, why you need everything, isn't it? We all as crafters are absolutely guilty of wanting everything. There we are. Cool. Right. Then we will have mayhem because we now need to do a bit of balancing. Let's just pop a little bit of glue on here. Ooh, she says. Into that. Stick that into that. You see, and now we've got a project that's impossible for decorating and seeing on camera. But 1, 2, 3. There we are. Anyone would think I'd planned it. Or 5 distress ink pads will equally work. Okay. So let's just move you down so that the full let's lift that up a little bit. A little bit. That will do. So from the House of Roses paper cutouts, I have lots of elements. So we're just going to add, because they're double-sided, which is brilliant, but the edges are white. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of bundled sage distress ink. That's an extra bit. So in the paper pads, they look like these are going to be horrible, thick pieces, because they've got a big bleed line. Right, so you will stay. So I've just got 2 pieces of MDF there. I do have my hot glue done. I think they might have been intended as pendants at some point, but hey ho, won't matter. Let's just let that grab. Let's that grab. There we are. And then let's just pop that onto there. So the 12 is at the top. Okay. And I'm wanting to add that little piece of floral onto there. So let's just now grab, because it's a chunky piece, some other heavy body gel. There we are. Yeah, we're all the same. We are all the same. So that piece can tuck under there. It's just adding an extra layer to there. Okay. And then let's just add this piece. I think it's going to go onto there. Well, I know it's going to go onto there. Here we are. So that piece is going to tuck underneath there. And I'm just going to get rid of that splodge that I've added into there, because I'm using the gloss, the matte. If I don't lift that out, it will dry white and be ugly. There we are. And then we're going to add another piece under there. We haven't quite got it in the same position we had, but that's okay. There we are. Let's just lift those pieces up. And ooh, we'll add another. There we are. Let's just add an extra piece. It's just a bit thicker than I ideally would like, but at least with it tilted, it works. And that piece can come under there. And in fact, if I just pull that down, that's going to work better, I think, isn't it, for everyone? Yeah, I think. Let's just pop. See, multiple things balanced. No, we're going to leave it like so. Okay. So that's going to sit there. That's going to sit there. Right, she says. So let us. Now she's dropped her little ink dauber. We're going to take this. These have all come from the paper cutouts. Yeah. Right. Good. 1, 2. 3. Let's just turn that over. Okay, let's just nip a piece of that off. There we are. Okay. So that will go onto there. But I'm just going to want to add some extra pieces. So I'm going to need an extra layer. Yeah. Onto there. So let's just take an extra piece. So these are just canvas spacers. They could be anything you wanted. There we are. And that's still, well, I knew there was a reason why I had 12 tons of canvas spacers out, because why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? Use what you have. There we are. There we are. Right. Let's put a glob. Glob being an absolute technical term, of course, onto there and line that up. Do I want it up quite so high? I'm going to take off, having put 3 on, I'm going to actually get rid of a layer because it does not like it with quite so much. But that's fine. It's a woman's prerogative to change her mind. There we are. Let's just tuck that round, tuck that in, line that up, line those lines up. That will work. Maybe I'm not going to pop that in at all. Maybe we're just going to leave that. Right, let's just wipe my hands because they're now intolerably sticky. Okay. But that will work for the time being. Now then, we are going to pop. I know why. We're going to get rid of that. And we're going to pop that piece onto there. There we are. I knew there was a reason, must have been my madness, as to why I needed that up there. There we are. I have a feeling that it was there that I added. Maybe not. We're going to leave that one. It's irritating me. Doesn't take much to irritate, does it? Right. I'm now going to break all of my normal rules, ladies, intentionally. Okay? And I'm going to pop my fence there. And I'm deliberately using the hot glue. There. Because it's going to grab quickly. Okay? Wow. That's one rose gone walkabouts. Okay. So, hot glue, little beads, and that's going to sit down a level. Okay, so there's a slight step. I painted 2 roses for a reason. And can I see where it's pinned to? No. So that one, the second rose, will jolly well have to wait until after the live. And then we can have that central on there. So we're going to do the same. Approximately central. Okay. So now we have some more bits and pieces. I know why. There we are. So we've got more paper pieces. It's just, so these are double-sided, ladies. Okay. And I'm just going to add a degree of life and texture to them. Yeah. And I'm going, because that's paper, I can add that onto there while it grabs. Yeah. And we have a second one of those. We might be giving this one a little bit of a haircut. We are going to give this little one a bit of a haircut, because why not? Let's just pop this into here, give that a little curve around. And that piece can come into there. Don't pick up your glue. And that one can go onto there. We're just building up. Another glue stick. Stay. We've already lost one piece onto the floor. We really don't need to lose the other. Because ivy gets over everything, doesn't it? Climbs over everything. There we are. Okay, okay. So in the papers, in the cutter parts, we have some of these. So let's just come around the edges. And we're going to add some extra bits. And I've now got spaces to tuck under and tuck over. Where's that hot glue gun gone? There we are. Okay. Oh, hot glue gun's my my favourite piece of kit in the world. No, not one little bit. There we are. Okay. So let's just take this. I'll pop that onto there. And we're going to mirror on the other side. Okay. That can go into there. I'm going to pop that piece underneath there. And because these are double-sided, it really isn't going to matter. This might prove a challenge. There we are. Okay. So we've now got a little rose garden there. Okay. And we want a bit more of a rose garden at the bottom. And that I've already inked. I know I have. So that can go into there. Partly on, partly off. It's going to help support that. Okay. And then we've got some extra pieces to tuck in and about. So let's just pop a little bit of greenery underneath there. And a little bit of greenery. Yow, she says, touching a hot glue gun. There. Into that. Okay. Now I've got two of these for a purpose, and I'm going to pop one into here and one on the other side. But given that I've dropped it and can't find it, we're just going to go with one for the time being, because otherwise we might be here forever while I try and retrieve it off my floor. And I'm going to pop that piece into there. So I'm using all of my nooks and my crannies. Then he will sit nicely onto there. Anyone would think I'd planned it. So Bunny can come into here. And Bunny, number 2, can sit there. There we are. Now I could spend quite a while now faffing and adding 3D balls, moss and all sorts. And I might yet do that. There's a little butterfly on there. So I'm just going to, I think, add another butterfly over there. That butterfly going to sit on there. These have all come from that fussy, yeah, the paper cutout book. Okay, Cookie. And we know that we're not meant to add in. There we are. And I think I want another rose on there. And that's fine. So there's lots more roses in my paper collection. So I can pop this out. Yeah. I'm going to add that piece onto there. We've got another rose there. Do I want to add another rose? And at this point you can then faff to your heart's content, can't you? See, I would definitely want another one underneath there. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Ooh, she says it's all balanced a bit precariously. There we are. There we are. Good way of using up lots and lots and lots of pieces. And have I used, I've probably used half of the paper cuts on this. Am I being extravagant? Yeah. Well, I definitely think I am. I definitely need to find what I've done with that other piece. I can't. It's looking empty over there. Excuse me, just while we faff. This will be a mistake, ladies. I know it's going to be a mistake. You see, I told you it'd be a mistake, but that's okay. We're going to pop that onto there. And as I put my glue gel away, I now remember why I had that piece on there in the first place. There we are. There we are. There we are. There we are. and then that one can go just under there. Okay, so I think I have done all the faffing I'm going to do on the live. As I say, I might add some moss on the bottom. I might add some art stones on the bottom. But we've used the brocante powder for texture. We've used the new lasers. We've done a little bit of classic decoupage. We've added lots of layers and detail. So it's a mix of all sorts of different products that have been used all together. So if I clear that out the way, that can go over there. There we are. It just does make for an interesting piece with lots of dimension. There we are. And I can now move them because I've generally got that set without too much. There we are. So if I can stand it up so it's got lots of dimension. It's pretty. And at some point, I will decorate the back. I promise you. It will not stay like that. She'll use the rest of those paper cuts, possibly on my live on Friday. How about that for a suggestion? So part 2, that might be a bit more problematic. I might not. I might do something completely different. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. I never know whether you're going to like what I'm doing. It's always a bit of a risk. It is just painting. It is just layering. It isn't difficult in any way, shape or form. It is just about having the courage to go with your instinct in terms of adding and using all of your products. So please, ladies, keep safe, look after yourselves, and I will see you back on Pentart's page next Tuesday. I know it's Easter Tuesday. But I might well be, I will be live on Friday on Crafting Together with All Brands, and I will be almost certainly live on Easter Sunday to keep people company that might need a bit of company on a difficult day for them. So take care. Bye for now.